The rain poured down mercilessly on the deserted highway, its rhythm drowned only by the sound of tires screeching. A battered car door slammed open, and a man with cold eyes hurled a trembling gray tabby cat onto the wet asphalt. The little cat's body hit the ground hard, and she whimpered, her scarred side pressing into the pavement. The man muttered, "Worthless thing, you'll survive or you won't." With that he drove away, the headlights fading into the stormy night. The cat's fur clung to her thin frame. Drenched, her golden eyes wide with fear and disbelief. She staggered to her paws, her body shivering violently. A distant horn blared as a truck sped past, splashing water across her fragile form. She meowed softly, almost pleading, as if asking the world, "Why me?" The night air was heavy, every drop of rain a reminder of her abandonment, her life unraveling on a lonely road. The cat limped toward the roadside ditch, her body shuddering with every step. Her breath came in shallow bursts, and the icy rain soaked her bones. She curled into a small ball under a broken fence, trembling violently. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but fear weighed heavier. She remembered faintly the warmth of a home, the sound of laughter once filling her days, now only a ghostly echo in her mind. Lightning split the sky, casting shadows that made her shrink further into the mud. She whispered a fragile meow, as though calling to someone who might never return. The highway roared above her, indifferent to her pain. She pressed her scarred side against the earth, desperate to disappear. In that moment, she was both survivor and prisoner of her own memories. The night deepened, and exhaustion dulled her senses. Each rumble of thunder jolted her awake, her ears twitching with terror. She remembered once chasing toys in a living room, the faint smell of bread from a kitchen nearby. Now only the sharp scent of wet asphalt filled her lungs. She thought of safety, of belonging, and the betrayal that stole it from her. The road above hummed with machines rushing past, blind to the life shivering below. She curled tighter, eyes glistening with despair. Yet in those eyes flickered something faint, a stubborn glimmer that refused to die. She was scarred, broken, but still breathing. And as her tail flicked weakly against the mud, the night seemed to whisper, "This is not the end." The storm eased slightly, leaving a misty drizzle. The cat lifted her head, her golden eyes searching the distance. A faint glow came from the town beyond the highway, its lights blurred through sheets of rain. She felt torn between fear and the urge to follow that faint glow. Her body quivered as she placed one paw ahead of the other, limping with slow, deliberate movements. Each step was a battle, but the thought of warmth and shelter pushed her forward. She paused at the edge of the ditch, mud clinging to her fur, the world around her echoing with silence after the storm. In the fragile stillness, she looked small, yet her determination seemed vast. She whispered another soft meow, the sound vanishing into the damp night. The cat reached the roadside, her paws sinking into puddles that mirrored the stormy sky. She froze as headlights flared in the distance, fear flashing in her golden eyes. Her heart pounded, and her body tensed, ready to dart. The memory of being thrown out still burned, and every light seemed like a threat. The vehicle passed without slowing, spraying her with water but leaving her unharmed. Relief mixed with sorrow as she realized no one cared to stop. She stood shaking, small against the vastness of the road. Above her, the clouds parted just slightly, revealing a sliver of moonlight that touched her wet fur. It was faint but gentle, as if the world offered her a fragile promise. Survive tonight, and maybe tomorrow will be different. The dawn crept slowly over the horizon, turning the wet road into a sheet of pale silver. The cat lay hidden in tall grass near the ditch, her body aching from the night's ordeal. Her golden eyes blinked against the dim light, filled with fatigue but still searching for something, anything that resembled safety. She remembered faintly the warmth of a soft blanket and the gentle hum of a human voice once calling her name. Those memories pierced deeper than the cold rain ever could. She licked her paw, trying to clean away the mud, though each movement was heavy with exhaustion. A sparrow fluttered nearby, chirping brightly, and for a moment her ears twitched toward it. The contrast was cruel. The world moved on, alive and vibrant, while she remained stuck in fear and pain. Still, her tail curled tightly, as if to remind herself that she was not ready to give up. The cat rose unsteadily, her paws sinking into soft earth as she limped toward the faint scent of food drifting from the town. Hunger gnawed at her belly, sharper than fear, urging her forward. The ground was slick with dew, each step leaving tiny imprints in the mud. She paused often, ears pricked at every passing sound, a crow overhead, the distant hum of traffic, the faint slam of a door. Every noise seemed a threat, every shadow an enemy. Yet she pushed on, driven by the memory of a bowl once filled with milk, the simplest of comforts now lost to her. She whispered a faint meow, as if reminding herself she still had a voice. It trembled in the air before dissolving into silence, swallowed by the indifferent town waking up in the distance. By mid-morning, the cat reached the outskirts of the town, its alleys littered with shadows and half-empty bins. She crept along the wall of a bakery, her nose twitching at the scent of bread mixed with discarded scraps. A flash of memory struck her, hands once lowering a plate of food, the warmth of a kind gaze. She froze, her golden eyes widening, then shook her head as if to banish the ache. A car horn startled her, and she darted beneath a broken wooden crate, curling into herself. From her hiding spot she watched humans pass by, their footsteps hurried, their voices rising in laughter. None noticed the small figure trembling in the shadows. For the first time, a flicker of longing replaced fear in her gaze, though doubt still wrapped around her like chains. She lingered in the alley until the scent of roasted meat wafted closer, carried on a breeze from a nearby food stall. Her stomach growled loudly, making her shift uneasily. A small child pointed in her direction, eyes wide with curiosity, but the adult tugged them along without pausing. Her heart pounded at the sight, torn between retreating into darkness and stepping forward into the light. She crouched low, tail flicking nervously, her golden eyes locked on a discarded piece of bread lying near the stall. Each second stretched, fear warring with need. She remembered the cruelty of hands that had once betrayed her, yet some part of her longed for kindness again. She waited, watching, trembling at the edge of hope. At last, hunger won. The cat darted from her hiding place, paws tapping softly against the pavement as she grabbed the bread in her mouth. Ow! Her body quivered as she chewed quickly, savoring even the stale taste. Passerby frowned at the sight, muttering stray things everywhere. His voice cut deeper than the cold, reminding her of her place in their world. Still, she swallowed every crumb, her golden eyes softening for the first time since the night began. For a fleeting moment, she felt alive again. She licked her paw slowly, grooming mud from her fur, reclaiming dignity in small motions. Around her, the town bustled, unaware of the silent promise forming in her heart. She would endure no matter how invisible she seemed. The cat wandered further into the town, where alleys grew darker and voices grew harsher. She approached a row of bins, the stench strong but the promise of food stronger. Her paws trembled as she pulled at scraps with her teeth. Suddenly a man shouted, "Get out of here!" His voice boomed as a boot struck the ground near her. She bolted, heart pounding, bread forgotten. Her body darted into a shadowed corner, fur bristling with fear. The memory of the road replayed, the cruelty echoing like thunder. She trembled in silence, eyes glowing like two frightened lanterns. The world seemed to spit her out at every turn, and yet her heart beat with stubborn defiance. She whispered a faint meow, less plea than vow, "I will not break." Night returned quickly, shadows swallowing the streets as she searched for refuge. The rain had stopped, but the cold clung to her bones. She found a cardboard box near a shuttered shop and curled tightly inside. From within, she watched the world go by through a crack, people laughing, children skipping, lights glowing. None saw her, none cared. A dog barked nearby, its voice low and fierce, and she shrank deeper into her fragile shelter. Hunger twisted her stomach, but loneliness hurt worse. She thought of the laughter she once knew, the hands that once stroked her fur, now ghosts. Her golden eyes shimmered in the dark twin embers, refusing to die. She pressed her face to her paw and whispered a silent prayer only the night could hear. The next morning, the box was kicked aside by a passing worker, sending her scrambling into the street. She froze as a group of children pointed, their voices rising in mocking laughter. "Look at the dirty cat," one cried. Another tossed a small stone that struck near her paw. She hissed weakly, not from anger but fear, and darted beneath a parked car. Her body shivered, pressed against the cold metal, heart racing as the laughter faded. For the first time, her golden eyes filled not only with fear, but shame. She wondered if she truly was nothing more than filth in their eyes. Yet in the darkness under the car, her tail flicked once, a small gesture of defiance against the cruelty of a world that rejected her. By midday, hunger pulled her from hiding again. She followed the scent of food to a crowded marketplace, where stalls brimmed with color and noise. She crept toward a table of fish scraps, body low, eyes locked on the prize. Just as her teeth grazed a piece, a hand swooped down. A vendor shouted, "Thief!" His broom crashed against the ground beside her, scattering scales and bones. She leapt backward, fur puffed, heart hammering. The crowd barely noticed, more annoyed than concerned. The smell of food haunted her, but danger pressed closer with every step. She retreated into the chaos, the sound of broom bristles echoing like a whip in her mind. Fear clawed deeper, yet her golden eyes still glimmered with something that refused to die. As dusk fell, she found herself at the edge of the shelter's gates, drawn by the scent of food and the faint sound of barking. The tall iron bars loomed like a prison, shadows stretching across the ground. She hesitated, scar aching, memories of cages flashing in her mind. From within came a chorus of voices, whimpers, barks, meows, a song of despair and hope mingled together. Her golden eyes widened, torn between fear of being trapped again and the pull of possible safety. She pressed her paw lightly against the gate, claws catching the rust. Behind her, the street stretched long and cruel. Before her, the unknown awaited. The night deepened, and she lingered at the threshold, caught between two worlds. The cat slipped cautiously through the half-open shelter gate, her paws brushing against rusted metal. Inside, rows of cages stretched into shadows, each filled with voices of despair. Dogs barked hoarsely, cats mewed faintly, their eyes glowing like fading embers. The air smelled of disinfectant mixed with sorrow. She froze, body tense, scar aching with memory. A young woman entered, carrying a tray of food bowls. Her eyes, though tired, softened when they fell on the trembling cat at the gate. She whispered gently, "Come here, sweetheart." The cat's ears flicked, torn between fear and yearning. She stepped back, then forward, paws trembling on the threshold. Something about the woman's gaze felt different, less like pity, more like recognition. The moment lingered, as if the past and present were about to collide. The woman knelt slowly, setting the tray aside, her voice calm like a lullaby. She whispered, "You look familiar, don't you?" The cat's golden eyes widened, catching the tone of recognition. Memories flickered, soft hands cradling her as a kitten, a gentle laugh echoing in a small home. The cat stepped forward, body quivering, then stopped just beyond reach. Fear still clung like chains, yet hope cracked through. The woman's eyes shimmered with emotion, and she murmured, "I thought I lost you long ago." The words carried weight, unlocking a past buried beneath betrayal. The cat's tail twitched nervously as she crouched low, staring at the woman as if piecing together a puzzle of her own identity. In a nearby cage, an older tomcat stirred, his fur-grain eyes wise and steady. He watched the trembling tabby intently, as if he knew her secret before she did. With a slow blink, he whispered in a voice of silence only she could feel, "You are not alone." The tabby turned her head, golden eyes locking with his, and for a moment, calm washed over her. The woman reached out again, her voice breaking softly. "You were mine once, weren't you? Taken from me before I could stop it." The cat's heart pounded. The betrayal she had suffered on the roadside was not the whole truth. She had not always been unwanted. She had once been loved. The revelation hit like lightning, tearing through years of despair. The shelter buzzed faintly with animal voices, yet between the woman and the cat, there was only silence. The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo. In it was a kitten, barely weeks old, nestled in her hands. She whispered, "You had those same golden eyes." The tabby blinked slowly, heart quivering. Recognition sparked in the woman's gaze, pain mixed with relief. The photo trembled in her hand as tears welled, her voice breaking. "They told me you were gone." The cat inched closer, nose twitching, eyes fixed on the photograph. Her scar ached, but for the first time, it did not symbolize only pain. It was proof of survival, a mark of endurance linking her past to this moment of truth. The revelation shifted the air within the shelter. The cat stepped forward at last, her paw brushing against the woman's hand. A fragile bridge formed, trembling yet unbreakable. The woman whispered through tears, "You were taken from me, but fate has brought you back." Around them, the shelter seemed to quiet, as if every animal held its breath. The older tomcat gave a slow blink of approval, his eyes heavy with knowing. The cat pressed her head gently against the woman's fingers, her golden eyes softening. What was once abandonment now transformed into rediscovery. The truth was clear. Her past was not only pain. It carried love, and with it, the possibility of healing, not just for her, but for every soul trapped behind those iron bars. The shelter grew restless as footsteps thundered down the hall. A man stormed inside, his face hard with disdain. The cat shrank, golden eyes narrowing in fear. He barked orders, "These strays cost too much. Some don't deserve saving." His voice cut like a blade through the air. The young woman stood tall, her hands trembling but her gaze unwavering. She whispered fiercely, "They are not things. They are lives." The older tomcat hissed from his cage, the sound low and sharp like a warning. The tabby pressed close to the woman's leg, her scar burning with memory. It was him, the cruel figure who had once cast her onto the roadside. Fate had brought them back together, and the air was heavy with confrontation. The man's voice rose, echoing against the shelter walls. "I'll put an end to this waste," he growled, stepping closer. The cat arched her back, fur bristling, a hiss breaking from her throat. The woman stepped in front of her, arms outstretched. "No," she said firmly. "You've done enough harm." For a heartbeat, the shelter seemed frozen, every eye fixed on the standoff. The older tomcat's gaze burned with quiet approval, his tail flicking like a drumbeat of defiance. The tabby felt her fear twist into courage, as though every scar had prepared her for this moment. She would not be thrown away again. Her golden eyes met the man's, blazing not with fear, but with defiance, a silent vow of survival. The confrontation sharpened as the man reached for the nearest cage. The animals erupted, barks, yowls, claws against metal. The woman shouted, "Stop this," but he sneered, "They're worthless." The tabby lunged forward, placing herself between the man and the cages, her body small yet fierce. Her golden eyes locked with his, unblinking, demanding recognition. The room shook with the voices of the forgotten, united in defiance. The woman grabbed his arm, voice shaking yet strong. "You cannot erase their worth." For the first time the man faltered, eyes flicking down to the scarred cat, glaring up at him. Her survival screamed louder than any words could. The truth was undeniable. This was no worthless life. This was resilience, clawed into existence. The man ripped his arm free, his face twisted with fury. He raised his hand as if to strike, but the cat hissed, leaping forward with claws bared. Her strike did not wound but startled, forcing him back a step. The woman seized the moment, shouting, "Leave now, or face the law." Her voice cracked but carried steel. The shelter echoed with cries, every animal lending their voice to the moment. The man's bravado faltered, his glare meeting the tabby's unyielding stance. He spat words of bitterness before storming out, the slam of the door shaking the walls. Silence fell, broken only by the woman's trembling breath. The tabby collapsed beside her, scarred but unbroken. Together they had faced cruelty and forced it to retreat. The aftermath hung heavy, but victory pulsed in the silence. The woman sank to her knees, wrapping her arms around the cat. "You are safe now," she whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. The cat pressed her head against her chest, golden eyes closing in relief. Around them, the shelter quieted, the animals watching as if hope had been reborn. The older tomcat gave a final approving blink, a sage's blessing. In that fragile embrace, the cat's journey came full circle, from abandonment to defiance, from despair to belonging. The scar on her side no longer marked weakness but survival. The woman whispered once more, steady and resolute, "You will never be forgotten again." The night outside rumbled softly, but inside, peace took root. Morning sunlight streamed through the shelter's windows, washing the cold walls in gold. The young woman moved gently between cages, offering food and soft words of comfort. The cat followed at her heels, no longer hiding, her golden eyes calmer than before. The other animals pressed against their cages, watching her closely, as though inspired by her presence. She brushed against the woman's leg, her scar glinting faintly in the light. The woman whispered, "They'll see your strength, and they'll believe again." Hope pulsed quietly through the air. For the first time, the cat felt her survival was not just her own, but something she carried for all of them. She was no longer only a victim of cruelty. She was a symbol of resilience. Later that day, a family entered the shelter, drawn by the sound of soft purrs and gentle voices. The cat froze at first, her heart skipping, memories of betrayal flickering. A little girl knelt on the floor, her eyes wide with wonder. She whispered, "She's beautiful." The tabby's ears twitched, and she inched forward, uncertain yet curious. The woman smiled, standing close by as if to say, "It's safe." The family reached out slowly, hands steady, expressions filled with warmth. For a moment, fear warred with trust. Then the cat stepped closer, brushing her cheek against the girl's hand. A purr rose from her chest, tentative but real. It was the sound of healing beginning. As the family spoke with the woman, the cat wandered near the cages, her tail brushing lightly against the bars. The older tomcat blinked slowly, his eyes filled with pride. A tiny kitten mewed from the corner, fragile and thin. The tabby paused, golden eyes meeting the kitten's gaze. For a heartbeat, it was as though she saw her younger self reflected back. She pressed her nose gently against the bars, and the kitten's trembling stopped. The woman whispered softly, "You're giving them hope." The cat's scar no longer felt like a burden but a story, etched into her skin, a story that carried light into the darkest corners. She turned back toward the family, her choice already forming in her heart. The woman guided the family through the paperwork, her voice steady but touched with joy. The cat sat nearby, her body relaxed yet alert, listening to the quiet hum of hope filling the shelter. The little girl leaned down, stroking her gently, whispering, "We'll take care of you." Tears welled in the woman's eyes, but she smiled through them. Around them, the shelter felt lighter, as though the walls themselves breathed easier. The cat curled briefly in the girl's lap, her purr stronger now, her golden eyes half closed in peace. This was not just rescue. This was renewal, a promise that the future could hold more than scars. For the first time, she believed love could last. As the sun set, the shelter cast long golden shadows across the floor. The cat sat by the door with her new family, waiting to step outside. She turned once toward the cages, her golden eyes lingering on the older tomcat and the fragile kitten. She released a soft meow, a farewell, and a promise. The woman placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "Your story will change theirs too." With one last look, the cat walked forward, scarred but unbowed, stepping into the fading light. Behind her, the chorus of shelter voices rose, no longer just cries of despair but threads of hope. Her journey had begun in cruelty, but it led here, into belonging, into a tomorrow worth fighting for. The car ride was quiet, the hum of the engine blending with the steady rhythm of the little girl's soft humming. The cat lay curled in her lap, golden eyes half closed in contentment. The scar along her side still marked her past, but the warmth of the child's hand traced gently over it without fear. The young woman sat in the passenger seat, glancing back often, her smile tinged with relief. For the first time, the cat did not tremble at the sound of the vehicle. Instead, she purred softly, a sound of fragile peace. The night stretched beyond the windows, but inside the car was a world of safety. The road that once abandoned her now carried her toward home. The family's home glowed warmly as the door opened, spilling golden light into the night. The cat hesitated at the threshold, golden eyes wide. She remembered doorways that led only to pain, but this one smelled of safety and warmth. The little girl whispered, "Come inside," kneeling with open arms. The cat stepped slowly across the wooden floor, her paws silent but her heart thundering. The young woman followed behind, her eyes shimmering with joy. The house carried echoes of laughter and the faint smell of food, a stark contrast to the cold asphalt she once knew. With each step, the cat felt her scars lose their weight, replaced by something lighter. For the first time, she walked into belonging. The cat explored cautiously, her tail flicking as she moved from room to room. She brushed against the furniture, sniffed at corners, and leapt softly onto the couch. The little girl followed, giggling, "She likes it here." The woman nodded, whispering, "She's home." The cat curled on a blanket folded neatly on the sofa, golden eyes blinking slowly. For a moment, she remembered lying on cold ground, begging for survival. Now, she rested in warmth, chosen not out of pity, but love. The sound of her purr filled the room like a song, weaving peace into the air. This was more than a house. It was a place where her story would not end in sorrow, but in healing. Later that evening, the little girl sat on the floor with the cat nestled against her chest. She whispered softly, "I'll always take care of you." The woman watched quietly from the doorway, her hand pressed over her heart. The cat purred, her body sinking deeper into the girl's embrace. In her golden eyes flickered images of her past. The highway, the storm, the cage, but they faded into the background, replaced by this moment of safety. The scar remained, but it no longer told a story of despair. It told one of survival, of finding love in a world that had once tried to erase her. The night outside was dark, but inside, light glowed steady, unshakable. As the household grew quiet, the cat leapt onto the bed, circling before settling beside the little girl. She curled tightly, scar visible yet no longer painful, her golden eyes closing slowly. The girl's hand rested gently over her back, fingers rising and falling with each breath. The young woman turned off the light, leaving only moonlight streaming through the window. The cat purred softly, a steady rhythm echoing through the still night. Her journey had begun in abandonment, forged in suffering, and now ended in peace. She was no longer a stray, no longer forgotten. She was loved, and her story had become a beacon for all who had once been lost. In the silence, she finally found home.